Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Katie from Clark & Barker, and today in this video we're going to be planting paperwhite bulbs. If you're unfamiliar with paperwhites, they are of the narcissus family. So if you were planting some fall planted daffodils just a few weeks ago or a few months ago now for some folks, these are the cousins of those daffodils. So these paperwhites are in the narcissus family, and they come up out of each bulb, which looks like this, with several long stalks. On each of those stalks there are several blooms, handful if you will, 5 or 6 probably, and they bloom in mid to late winter depending on when you plant these. They're native to southern regions of Spain and France, so they're actually very sensitive to cold. So in some areas of the US you can actually plant these bulbs in late fall and expect to get some blooms in late winter outside. So that's going to be in zones 8 through 11. But if you do have freezing, so any temperatures below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, these won't bloom at all. Now in our climate here in Denver, Colorado, that is absolutely not a choice. We regularly get freezes well below that. Even last night we had quite a freeze. And so we plant them indoors like most people. Even if you live in some place like Seattle or Portland, up in the Northeast, you wouldn't want a chance putting these outside just because they're so sensitive. So many people, what's popular is to grow paperwhites inside where you can keep them climate controlled. When people usually plant them, they plant them late fall, expecting to get some blooms around Christmas time. And so at least growing up in my household, they were a Christmas tradition for us. My mom magically made them bloom right around Christmas time, and it was always a joyful thing to see these paperwhites grow and bloom. Now to force paperwhite bulbs indoors, which is what we're doing, there are some places on the internet, so the wide web, that you will find cold temperatures suggested, that you need to somehow store paperwhite bulbs in cold areas for a number of weeks before you try to force them. And from my digging, I've heard that that's actually not true. So I got these late fall, thought I had to give them a few weeks to be cold, so I put them in a cold closet in our household. And then my mom came for Christmas to visit, and she said, "Oh, where are your paperwhites? I thought you said you'd planted them." And I said, "Oh, I'm giving them their cold period." Well, lo and behold, Mama Clark knows best, and they don't require any of that cold period. So a little lesson for me as I draw back the curtain on my family's traditions and try to recreate them on my own. You can actually just put them in water and they'll bloom in 4 to 6 weeks. I'll give you a little bit more detail around what that means, but I just want to show you really quickly what just a few days does with water with these bulbs. If you can see closely here, you'll see 2 little roots sprouting out of this bulb, and that is just from one weekend or just a couple days of being put in water. And when I say being put in water, you know, they are covered just up to where their roots would grow, and that's going to force them to push roots. So you can plant paperwhite bulbs in soil, which is a little bit easier to keep paperwhite bulbs moisture, to keep the water level a little bit more consistent. Or if you're somebody like me who doesn't want the mess of the soil, or you just like seeing the paperwhites grow in rocks, it's aesthetically what you like, then you can do it that way as well. I love the simplicity of growing these in rocks. I also love to see the roots grow, and I love to see the paperwhites grow over time. So that's just how I've learned to do it, and that's how I grow paperwhites. Now what you'll need for this activity, I have all these out for you. First, you'll need some kind of vessel. You can use any vessel for this as long as there's a little bit of place for water to drain that's away from the roots. So in soil, you'll need some kind of drainage, maybe a dish where the water can pour out and just, you know, hover in the bottom or in the dish. If you're like me and you're using a closed bottom vessel, like this hurricane vessel, just need to watch some of what these rocks are doing, or how much water these rocks are holding, I should say. So I got this hurricane jar from Target. They're there right now. $20, $25. You can get comparables at Michael's for a little bit cheaper. Michael's always has coupons, so I usually try to check there first. But if you're a Michael's frequenter, you know that they just had their big clearance sales, and so at least my local Michael's store was a little bit empty when I went. So I went to Target, got this $25 glass hurricane vessel. It's made out of thick glass, and it's big enough to hold all 10 of my bulbs, which I have over here. If you've watched our bulb unboxing video, I got my Paperwhite bulbs from Eden Brothers, and none of them came rotted, at least in this bunch, so I'll be planting all of them. 2 of the bulbs have several off bulbs, or yeah, they've already naturalized a little bit and created more bulbs off of the main bulb. So I'm just going to plant them all as is. They all fit in here, so I'm going to put them right next to each other. In a vessel like this, you don't need to give them extra room, so I'm just going to plant them right up close to each other to fill this space. Also at Michael's, I got some rocks. You can use any kind of rocks. I mean, I was tempted to even just go outside and use some of that hardscape that we have out in our backyard or front yard. But I was really interested in the aesthetic of these smaller pebbles. So that's all you're going to need here: rocks, vessel, bulbs, and then we're going to put some water in. I've rinsed my rocks. They're probably fine right out of the plastic container, but I love giving everything a wash down and sanitizing it a little bit before I go in and plant something. Especially this vessel container came with a lot of dust and fingerprints on it. I'm sure people were looking at it at the store. It was the last one on the shelf, so cleaned this, and I thought may as well clean these or rinse them out just like I would berries or something like that when I bring them home. So after rinsing these out, I'm just going to put some in the bottom of the jar, and I'm going to fill the jar to about 1 inch deep with rocks. So I'm going to do that right now. Alright, so now that we have our rocks in the bottom of our jar, about 1 inch thick, I'm just going to place the bulbs directly in here and kind of gently nuzzle them down into the rocks, just so that the bottom is able to reach water. And so we want them all to be right at about the same level. So don't go pushing one in deeper than the other. Definitely flatten out or level your rocks before you do this, and then just try to keep them all out on the same plane. Now that we have all of our bulbs somewhat situated, they're all at about the same plane level, we're going to just use the extra little bit of rocks we have to secure the bulbs so that they don't fall over. So imagine that these bulbs are going to have about 1 foot long stalks and flowers on the end that are pretty heavy. We don't want any of the bulbs themselves flopping around. And the nestling in is going to help a little bit, but we'll provide a little bit of extra support with these rocks around the bulbs. And that is it. That is all you need to be able to plant some Paperwhites. If you force them correctly, they should be blooming in about 4 to 6 weeks. Forcing correctly just means having the right amount of water, having water access to their roots without rotting them. I've also heard that keeping at cooler temperatures, these are winter bloomers in warmer climates, but still need a little bit of cooler temperatures. So if you have a spot in your house that gets a lot of direct light and it keeps around the mid 60s, I've heard that Paperwhites are going to do a little bit better in those climates rather than far away from any sunlight or potentially in warmer or cooler climates in your home. So I'll show you how to fill up the water to the correct level. Again, you just want them touching the bottom. So let's grab one of these. So when you look at these bulbs, you'll see that there's a little bit of a ridge around the root area. And what I like to do, or how I've seen others do it as well, is just fill up the water to just touching or just above that level. Here in Denver, we have a really dry climate, and so it's important for us here to keep track of that water level over the days because it will evaporate quickly in our houses. They're just that dry. Where I come from in Oregon, which is in the Portland metro area, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Maybe every couple of days, make sure that there's some water around, but it's humid enough up there that evaporation doesn't happen as quickly. So depending on where you live, you might need to watch your water level more or less closely. If you're worried about not being able to keep this root area moist, you might think about using a soil grow method, which is simply planting these bulbs midway in soil. There's plenty of resources online, and I'll link one of those resources for soil planted bulbs in the comments below. So I'll go do that now and show you what the correct water level looks like. Saw just now in the close-up, I was adjusting the bulbs as I watered to make sure that the roots were able to reach the water. So every time you add water to this basin, you're going to want to make sure that the roots are not exposed, that they just have access to that water so that they can feed the bulb and allow it to grow. And at the same time, you want to make sure that none of the bulbs have moved and are, now have either exposed roots or have some of the bulb in the water. These bulbs are prone to rot, so you're just going to want to watch that. The last thing I want to say is that Paperwhites are mostly annuals. So if you're forcing them indoors, they're definitely annuals. In some areas, if you're growing outdoors, these can be annuals, and only in some places in Southern California and Texas are they perennials. But again, that they're very sensitive to freeze, and so, for instance, there are lots of places in Texas where the ground froze last year unexpectedly, and you're probably going to lose your Paperwhites during those freezes. So just treat them as an annual, enjoy new ones year to year, and thank you for watching this movie. Thanks for taking this Paperwhite journey with me, and I'll give you updates as these Paperwhites grow.